Hello, and welcome to the Season 1 recap episode. I'll be going over all of the important details, events, and revelations of the season, so needless to say, massive spoilers are ahead. This will make for the perfect refresher of our story as we head into next season, or the perfect starting point if you're new and would rather jump into Season 2 without catching up on Season 1 first. With all that being said, let's begin. Act 1. Rainy Days Ahead. Our story takes place in Aelios, a land of magic and fantasy not too unlike many others I'm sure you've heard of. More specifically, in a stretch of land known as the Ikoi Rainforest. Rain falls year-round, and even in the dead of winter, temperatures rarely drop below 60 degrees. The flora and fauna are unforgiving, with trees reaching hundreds of feet into the air and predators and plants alike posing a threat. Thus, it's home to only one settlement, the city of Koi, with neighborhoods built into canopies, farming fields that take advantage of the region's rain-soaked climate, and a massive water collection network built atop the highest trees. Koi has managed to carve itself a place here. Belonging to New Ranku, and with the Wakata River cutting directly through town, it also serves as an important through line for the nation and the dwarven holds to the southeast. Most goods are transported by large strings of boats called locomotes, bolted together in lines not too unlike train cars. The moral of the story is, Koi is a city thriving in a hostile environment, or at least it used to be. Recent troubles with a gang of river bandits stealing from the locomotes and humanoid creatures made of bark attacking everything from guards to caravans has put the city in a tough spot and put many of its residents on bed rest in the clinic. It is here we find Eamon. Half human, half dark elf, Eamon has spent much of his life on the fringes of acceptance, never truly belonging to any one culture, place, or people. His magic manifested at an early age, but after the death of his parents and the loss of his mentor, he locked it away. He awakens to meet Fionn, a skilled physician and head of the Koi Clinic. Eamon explains that the Midnight Dove, the ship he was a navigator for, was caught in a storm and crash-landed on the storm-dread coast. Unfortunately, he was the only survivor, and with little food or supplies, he began to make his way blindly through the rainforest. He ran into a small creature made of plant matter called Neen. Neen appeared to be guiding him, or at least helping him, to some degree as they traveled. Unfortunately, they were ambushed by a handful of humanoid toad creatures, and the last thing he remembers is going unconscious as one hit him over the head with a club. Fionn explains he was found an hour west of Koi by a guard, much closer to town than Eamon's story would imply, and with no Neen in sight. Neither of them understands how he traveled such a long distance, but before they can ponder too long, a clinic worker appears with two folks looking for Fionn. Renistir, a Dhampir lizard folk hailing from an order of half-vampires, and Phosphorus, an explosive expert rat folk who views alchemy as the world's greatest asset and magic as its greatest crutch. After giving him in the all-clear, Fionn proposes that the three of them should go to collect some iridescent heliconias for her in the clinic, a plant with many medicinal uses, something the clinic is in short supply of these days, what with the woodsmen, those humanoid bark creatures I mentioned before, and the river bandits running amok. Eamon agrees, as he has no other way of paying for his treatment, with Renistir and Phosphorus agreeing to tag along with the promise of payment from Fionn. Eamon is hesitant of the other two, as they travel to Fionn's designated harvesting spot, which is only made worse after Phosphorus gets into it with a monkey, resulting in an explosive outcome. After 8 hours of travel, though, they make it to the grouping of trees covered in iridescent heliconias relatively unharmed. But before they can get to harvesting, they are attacked by a small, bulbous, vaguely humanoid creature made of plant roots. It attempts to suck Eamon's blood, but the party manages to kill it before it causes any real problems. A short bit of heliconia harvesting later, and the trio sets up camp. It's here Eamon learns that Phosphorus is indebted to Renistir, having only just met him a week or so ago in the city of Moila, after he bailed him out of jail for something that was totally not his fault. After a night of rest and a trip back to Koi, the party delivers the heliconias to Fionn. If they're looking for more work, she tells them, she has 3 possible leads for them. A Steel Brand, a group of expertly trained mercenaries, is at the Emperor's Inn and Pub in need of help with something, though she knows not the specifics. The Farmers Guild, a collective under the much larger New Ranku's Merchants Guild, normally has a need for folks who can protect their fields from wildlife. And the Arcane Assembly Hall, a collection of magically focused scholars, is always in need of capable folk. The party decides to go to the Emperor's Inn and Pub first, where they purchase room and board and speak with Vasco, the Steel Brand Fionn had mentioned. It turns out Renistir, Phosphorus, and Vasco all know each other, as they all hitched a ride with the same caravan to get to Koi. Vasco is here to bring a man back to the Steel Brands, one Jander Agnew, Unfortunately, the captain of the Koi Guard despises the steel brands and has told many of the important folks in the city to not speak with Vasco, including the heads of many important guilds. So Vasco hires the party to look into things for him. He has 3 leads: the Farmers Guild, the Dock Workers Guild, and rumors of a forger that could have made Jander new paperwork to change his name. The next day, Renister and Phosphorus head to look for the forger, with Vasco heading to the Farmers Guild and Eamon heading to the Dock Workers Guild. Renister and Phosphorus quickly track down the forger in one of the treetop neighborhoods. They learn that she did in fact forge new papers for a human man roughly matching Jander's description, but not much else. Eamon speaks with the head of the Dock Workers Guild under the guise of looking to work for him. He learns that Jander Agnew now goes by Spencer Tilrim, a dock worker on the night shift. The party reconvenes shortly after and gives Vasco all the information they dug up. He thanks them for their quick work and prepares to apprehend Jander, something he wishes to do alone. For the rest of the day, the party heads to the Arcane Assembly Hall in town in the hopes of finding more work, and for Eamon to talk to someone with some knowledge on primal magic. Here they meet a halfling man named Dill Bilbis, head of the Assembly Hall, master tinkerer, and renowned crafter. Dill points the party towards a catfolk from Wakuzana, New Ranku's capital city, named Prykus for work, and Yinhi, a wood elf from a secluded tribe deep within the Ikoi rainforest, as the Hall's resident primal magic expert. Eamon quickly learns that expert might be a bit of an overstatement, as Yinhi's magic is incredibly basic. Still, the two of them hit it off over their shared interest. Yinhi even goes so far as to tell Eamon that if he ever has the chance to go see her people, the Jaedun elves, he should take it. Though they normally attack outsiders on sight, so she doesn't recommend making the journey without a guaranteed in with the tribe. Renister meets with Prykus, while Dill and Phosphorus talk shop, signing up the party to protect him as he travels east of Koi, to a spot he believes to have been the home of a nymph, feminine nature spirits that protect natural areas. After a night's rest, the party heads out with Prykus in the morning. According to his map, it will take them a full day's travel to reach their destination. So as they do, the party learns that Prykus is a scholar whose sole focus is on what happens to things when they die. For example, what happens to a spot that was once home to a nymph after it passes? They arrive in the evening at what looks to be a dried-up pond, with Prykus determining that a naiad, nymphs made of water, once resided here. He gets to collecting samples with Phosphorus, while Eamon and Renister set up camp and prepare to take watch. In the middle of the night, 2 humanoid figures made of bark and wood attack the camp. Woodsmen. Thankfully, they are defeated with little harm coming to the group, and by dusk the next day, all 4 of them have made it safely back to Koi. That evening, while Phosphorus and Eamon are making their way through town, an undercover guard named Tajima confronts them on the street in disguise, though she quickly drops the act. She wants to know one simple thing. Can Eamon wield magic? As a show of trust, she shows him her own magical abilities, and Eamon ultimately decides to be open and honest, telling her that yes, he can in fact use magic. They part ways with Tajima asking Eamon to stop by the clinic if he has free time to help heal the wounded. Magic is one thing, but healing magic is a godsend, and Eamon has both in ample supply. The party spends another night at the Emperor's Inn and Pub, where Renister reveals to the others that he used to be a guard in New Ranku's capital city, Wakuzana. He was killed, though he remembers little about the circumstances of his passing. The Order of Ichor resurrected him and gave him a second chance at life. After a night's rest, Renister and Phosphorus go to the Farmers Guild to look for more work, while Eamon meets with Yinhi just south of town to show her his magic. Here she sheds more light on her past, telling Eamon she was exiled from the Jaedun elves willingly to pursue her magic. Unfortunately, she can shed little light on Eamon's magic, but tells him of the Keeper, leader of the Jaedun elves. He would almost assuredly know something. Renister and Phosphorus take a job looking into some rice going missing from the fields, eventually tracking down Eamon after his research session with Yinhi, during which Eamon activates his curse for the first time, causing a light swirling of wind to be around him until he gets a good night's sleep. After reuniting and heading out to the rice fields, they find evidence of them being cut, not eaten by wild animals. One of them spots a trail heading south into the jungle, and after following it, they come across a small den dug under the root of a towering kipu tree. Here they find the culprits. 2 mites, small, feeble, weak-willed fae that delight in pulling cruel pranks. After a firm slap and a good telling off, the party watches as the mites flee into the jungle, promising to never return to the rice fields again. With no more leads on work, the party settles into downtime. Eamon helps tend to the wounded at the clinic, with Fionn promising to keep his healing magic under wraps. Phosphorus works on a random assortment of projects at the Arcane Assembly Hall under an old kobold named Vip. He takes a liking to Phosphorus, gifting him his old snare crafting recipe book. And Renister, as the party's resident religious man, goes to the city's chapel, where he meets Kuhara, head priestess and devout worshipper of Grimm. He spends his time updating and double-checking the chapel's religious tomes on Tzetios, the divine that Renestier worships. Act 2. 3 Missing Kids. In the early hours of the day, Tajima stops by the Emperor's Inn and pub to tell Aemon that the guards are in need of the party's help, and if they wish to know more, to head to the guard barracks by the city's western exit. They leave at once, meeting with Ekon, a middle-aged human man with a warm heart, quick pistol hand, and captain of the guard. With the bandits and the woodsmen, the guards don't have anyone to look into 3 disappearances that have happened recently. Shinta Tamaki, an 8-year-old who was last seen tending to the graveyards with the rest of her class, Kubo Madoka, a 10-year-old who was last seen by his close friend Shiro, though he seems too traumatized by what he saw to speak with anyone, and Tobi Haru, a 17-year-old who was last seen working with the maintenance crew he is apprenticing under. One of the guards at the north gate thought they saw someone roughly matching his description leaving in the middle of the night, but it was dark, raining, and the figure was cloaked, so there's no way to be sure. All 3 of them have gone missing in the past 3 days, one after another. The party agrees to help, and they start at the schoolhouse, with 2 of the 3 missing kids having been in the same class there. They meet with Hera, teacher of both Kubo and Shinta, and learn a few things about each. Shinta is a diligent, quiet girl who always goes right home after school. She has few friends, is incredibly intelligent for her age, and lives with her dad in one of the treetop neighborhoods. The classes take turns doing basic upkeep on the graveyard, with Shinta up and vanishing while Hera's class was taking their turn. Kubo is a rambunctious, outspoken boy who loves to paint. He's best friends with a pair of twins, Shiro and Seno Masata, the former of which hasn't been to school since Kubo went missing, and he lives next door to the twins with his mother. The party speaks with Seno and learns that the 3 boys, Seno, Shiro, and Kubo, were all part of a group they called the Bumble Brigade. Seno wasn't with the other 2 the day Kubo went missing, though he does reluctantly tell the party that the Bumble Brigade's hideout is a fort they made themselves about 30 minutes outside of Koi, even though their parents told them not to leave the city with all the danger about. Hera gives them directions to Kubo's, the Masata twins, and Shinta's homes as the party decides to split up. Aemon and Phosphorus will go speak with Kubo's mother, and Renestier will go look into the maintenance crew Tobi was apprenticing under. Aemon and Phosphorus meet Kubo's mother, Teruya. She lets them know of their family's secret. She and her son Kubo are kitsune, humanoids that can turn into foxes and often possess a high aptitude for magic. After her husband was taken by the Majin, an infamous empire known for kidnapping anyone who might have magical abilities, she and Kubo went into hiding in Koi. They then speak with Shiro, finally getting him to open up on what happened the day Kubo went missing. He speaks of 2 creatures made of wood attacking them at the fort and carrying Kubo off into the woods. Meanwhile, Renestier was busy tracking down Tashira and Kawa Suzu, the 2 maintenance workers Tobi was apprenticing under. He learns that before he disappeared, Tobi was acting incredibly fatigued and tired, to the point that he almost fell off a ladder while working on a water collection tank high up in one of the kipu trees. Tobi's mother died giving birth to him, and his dad died a couple years back, so Tobi lives alone. They thank Renestier for looking into things and give him directions and a key to Tobi's place. It's there that Renestier finds a note in Tobi's room that speaks of a voice giving him nightmares, that he fled the city following its directions and to under no circumstance follow him. Phosphorus heads back to the Emperor's Inn and pub to prepare to leave town and look for the kids, while Aemon goes to see Shinta's father, Nakanishi. He doesn't learn much, other than Nakanishi having no idea how or why his daughter has gone missing. After the party regroups at the Emperor's Inn and pub, they decide on a plan of action. They will head south of town, investigating the graveyards where Shinta went missing before heading to the Bumble Brigade's hideout. Then, depending on what they find, they'll head north to look for Tobi. At the graveyards, Phosphorus finds evidence of Shinta having headed off into the woods on her own, and a set of tracks to prove it. After following them, they find her being attacked by a jungle panther, but after a few firebombs light it on fire, it flees. Shinta quickly reveals that she has magic, or at least some sort of magic capabilities, as she seems convinced the party has been hired by her father to take her back home, something she very much does not want to do. But after some convincing, some healing, and a promise that they will bring her to the guards, not her father, she agrees to return to Koi with them. Once back at the south gate, a guard stands watch over her as another heads to find Ekon and sort out what's going on with her dad. That's 1 kid saved, as the party heads towards the Bumble Brigade's fort. They find evidence of a struggle, much in line with what Shiro described, and follow a trail deeper into the jungle, stumbling along 2 dwarves and a half-elf fighting a group of milky white acidic oozes. 1 dwarf perishes in the fighting, with the other being saved by the party, as the half-elf sneaks off into the jungle. While talking to the surviving dwarf, the party determines him to be a member of the bandits they've heard so much about, but not before he sprints off into the jungle. Bandits are no strangers to kidnapping, so they follow the tracks of the half-elf man that snuck off during the fight. After catching up with him, a battle ensues, with Phosphorus burning him to death. They take his rifle and decide to follow the fleeing dwarf's trail next. Unfortunately, they find a massive snake with a rather dwarf-sized bulge in its belly. Thankfully, Renistir can talk to the snake, so they avoid a fight but learn nothing. They spend the rest of the day canvassing the area in search of Kubo, finding a bit of white fur and a splintered woodsman's corpse, but nothing more. After a night spent camping by the Bumble Brigade's hideout in hopes that Kubo might return there, they head back to Koi empty-handed. Nakanishi, Shinta's father, has been taken into custody after Ikon and some guards learned of his fairly abusive magical training regime, with Shinta staying with Hera in the meantime. They also learn that the half-elf they killed was Min, one of the two brothers that lead the river bandits, and collect a reward for his death. The party then heads north in search of Toby, thankfully finding a trail that leads them to another den dug under some kipu tree roots. However, this time there are no mites to be found, only a bogey, humanoid fae that delight in torturing their victims to death before consuming their souls. Thankfully, the party is able to kill the vile creature and rescue Toby from its clutches before it's too late. Eamon calms the boy down and tends to his wounds, where he learns that Toby had been having horrible nightmares for weeks, caused by the bogey. It told him to come here, and if he told anyone, the bogey would kill them. Eamon assures him he's safe now, and once Phosphorus puts an explosive end to the creature's lair, the party brings Toby back to the clinic in Koi. That's 2 kids saved. Eamon then tracks down Tajima, who recruits 3 scouts, the guards that specialize in moving through the dense jungle to, scout and go with the party as they head deeper south into the rainforest in search of Kubo. Okano, Miki, and Miyaki, the 3 scouts Tajima recruited, lead the way. They travel several days, still with no sign of Kubo, bandits, or anything really, when suddenly they spot some strange tracks. They follow them to a tree that bursts to life, revealing a large, vaguely humanoid tree creature carrying a cocoon-like entity held up in its branches. The cocoon appears to be growing a woodsman within its membrane. A fight ensues, ending in both sides retreating, but not before Miki can grab a piece of the creature's bark. Running low on energy and supplies, the group turns around and heads back to Koi, and after a few more days' travel, they return empty-handed. With no more leads to go on, and no more time to spare searching an almost endless expanse of rainforest, Kubo is pronounced dead, though the party doesn't fully give up hope. Just as things begin to settle down, a priestess of the chapel requests that Renistir go check on Kuhara. She prays at the graveyards every evening, and in the decades she's worked at the chapel, Kuhara has never once been late. That is, until today. Renistir quickly gathers up the party and heads to the graveyard, where they find Kuhara hiding within a crypt from 3 scorched zombies. They defeat them, rescuing Kuhara, but not before investigating the area. Divine sigils used to raise the dead are found inscribed into the coffin lids, as well as evidence of someone adept at concealing their presence entering and exiting the crypt before heading into the forest. But after following the trail for only a few minutes, it abruptly ends, and once again, the party find themselves empty-handed and without answers. After Renistir makes sure Kuhara makes it safely back to the chapel, she gives him a ring of her old mentor. He was a devout religious defender of the innocent, like Renistir. The party then settles into another stretch of downtime. Phosphorus and Eamon resume their work at the assembly hall and clinic, while Renistir helps watch the gates so the already short-staffed guards can get some much-needed rest. Act 3. The Jaedun Elves. One morning, as Eamon stops by the Arcane Assembly Hall to speak with Yinhi, she tells him of an opportunity. Someone named Sunny needs help getting to the Jaedun Elves, specifically someone who speaks Elvish and can communicate with them. Yinhi couldn't go even if she wanted to, as leaving her tribe means she can never return, but she urges Eamon to go, assuring him that Sunny has one of the few things that would stop the elves from attacking them on sight. Eamon gathers the party and heads to the south gate, where they witness a sunflower humanoid telling a heartfelt story atop the carapace of a massive stag beetle. They're introduced to Sunny, traveling merchant, excitable storyteller, and in need of a translator. Once they agree on payment and the preparations to leave are complete, Sunny and the party set out to head deeper into the Ikoi rainforest than ever before. After only a few hours' travel, Sunny introduces the group to Fleta, a Pegasus unicorn who is incredibly ill. Sunny's boss, who they refuse to name, needs Fleta taken to the Jaedun Elves because she is suffering from a lack of Fey magic. The elves are the closest place that has it, and if she doesn't get it soon, she'll die. Now, knowing what's at stake, the party begins their month-long journey through the jungle, all the while keeping a watchful eye out for Kubo. 20-some days of trudging through the rainforest later, and the normal jungle scenery has begun to change. The flowers have grown bigger, sometimes reaching the tops of the smallest trees, each topped with petals bursting into color. Vibrant blues, pinks, and oranges have begun popping into the jungle's color palette. The rain itself begins to shift, gaining a slight green hue. A few more days later, and they spot a large, vibrantly colored bird flying through the trees. It lands on the arm of a massive humanoid, bark-like skin, vine-like hair, and wielding a blade the size of Renistir. Tension hangs in the air as the giant tells them to leave. They are not welcome in these woods. Before Sunny can reveal Fleda, a fight breaks out, but is shortly stopped by none other than Neen. He comes flying through the forest, appearing to scold the giant as they profusely apologize to the little plant. The giant introduces themselves as Troctor and explains that Neen here is the keeper's familiar. Troctor has been told to escort them the rest of the way to Baarin, home of the Jaedun elves. So off they go, and with Troctor leading the way, travel is much quicker. After only a few more days, they meet Senu, a centuries-old druid and keeper of the elves. He welcomes them to Baarin, agreeing to take in Fleda on the condition that Aemon undertakes the Keeper's Trial, a rite of passage all keepers must take before taking up the mantle. Aemon will not become leader of the elves once he's done, but he will hopefully gain a deeper understanding of his magic and himself. Renistir and Phosphorus will accompany him on this trial, as well as a recent visitor to the village. But first, they are introduced to the Keeper in Training, a hot-headed elf named Daerun. She gives them a tour of the village, where they meet Raiji, the visitor Senu mentioned earlier. A half-human, half-genie, Raiji is a simple man, hailing from the Salim Desert and craving nothing more than to become stronger. His torso is covered with magical tattoos representing earth, wind, fire, and water that burst into a fiery blaze when he fights. During the tour, they assist Daerun in healing an injured elven hunter, but are told little about what happened, much to the party's dismay. After the tour, Senu explains a bit about the trial. It has 3 parts. First, they will travel to Boonpa, where the 4 of them will enter the lake and retrieve a tear hidden within it. Second is Amelje's trial. Amelje is the Jaedun elves' patron deity, represented by a crystalline kipu tree in the middle of Baarin. Senu has no way of knowing what her trial will entail, only that it historically revolves around the keeper taking care of a potential threat to the elves. And third, Aemon must confront the darkest parts of him within the trunk of Amelje. The 4 are given a room to share, with Sunny and his beetle staying in the elves' orchard/grove. In the morning, the party, Daerun, and Fleda make the day's journey to Boonpa, where they meet Naren, a naiad or water nymph that presides over the lake. She explains that they will be retrieving her tear from within the lake, but it's not as simple as just swimming to the bottom. Once they enter, they will be transported to a reflection of Aemon's soul, which can take many different forms. So in they go, surfacing in a turbulent sea, the only thing within sight being Aemon's old ship, the Midnight Dove. After safely making it on board, the sea grows quiet, eerily so, and the party sets about getting into the captain's quarters. But suddenly, a vision of Aemon's old magical mentor, Mathis, appears atop a pile of bloody corpses. He blames Aemon for them, before the party has a chance to dispel the vision. Once inside the captain's quarters, they slay shadowy versions of themselves before deciphering a treasure map and its directions. Upon completion, they find themselves on a tropical island, in a classic X marks the spot scenario. It doesn't take long for them to find and dig up a treasure chest that, when opened, shows them all a vision. They see the dried up pond that Prychus brought them to, but it is full of water this time. A woman, made of that water, like Naren, walks upon its surface. A man in a hooded cloak approaches unseen in the foliage surrounding the pond, swiftly slaying the naiad and stealing a smooth stone from her chest before fleeing. Naren comes from the trees, and the dying woman refers to her as her sister. The party awakens to the sound of Naren singing, her tear clasped within Aemon's hand. The sun has long set, and Naren tells them to rest before setting off to check on Daerun and Fleda. Aemon reveals to Renistir that while he was the navigator on the Midnight Dove, he was also a slave. He had been secretly saving money to skip town at the next port when his captain found his stash. He was brought in front of everyone to be made an example of, but as his captain began to beat him, Aemon's magic roared forth, killing everyone on board except him. That's how he ended up crash-landed on the Dreadstorm coast. But before Renistir can reassure him, the party is ambushed by short, bulbous plant creatures reminiscent of the strange thing they fought while gathering heliconias for Fionn, except these ones seem older, or at least more capable. Each has a mysterious slip of parchment with blood smeared on it on their foreheads. They slay them, as Raiji recognizes the smell of the blood on the parchment as the same blood from the wounded elf they helped the day before. Out of the forest strides Senu. He teleports them back to Baarin and explains to them all he knows. As keeper, He can speak with the forest, which allows him to be aware of basically everything that happens in the immediate area. Those creatures with the blood tags on their foreheads were completely invisible to him, almost as if they didn't exist. That is, until the blood tag was removed. This troubles Senu deeply, as this has never happened before. He unfortunately doesn't know why Emelche has requested Aemon take the Keeper's trial, but he does reveal that he was the one that saved Aemon from the frog-like humanoids after he crash-landed. Aemon's magic burst forth in a frightening display of power, and in subduing him, Senu essentially lost his right arm. It is still attached to him, and he can move it by keeping it covered in plant matter, but it is dead. The party head to bed, now uneasily awaiting a sign from Emelche for the next step of their trial. After some much-needed rest, a fox leads the party into the forest, though unfortunately it is not Kubo. It takes them straight to some sort of treetop base filled with boggards, the frog-like humanoids that almost killed Aemon, though these seem to be a different group than the ones he fought before. They have similar blood tags to the plant creatures from before, and after dispatching them, the party searches through their base. But before they can discover too much, another group of boggards returns, also with tags, along with a crocodilian creature that appears from within a book that one of the boggards was carrying. Another battle ensues, the party once again coming out on top, and even managing to capture 2 boggards. They return with the boggards and the strange book the crocodilian creature came out of, as they interrogate them with Senu. The book is under some sort of illusionary effect that stops it from being read that even Senu can't dispel, though thankfully they learn much from the boggards. A hooded man, matching the description of the one they saw in their vision in Boonpaw, hired the boggards and the crocodilian creature to find a way into the Kipu tree that houses all of the elves' records, a place not even the party is allowed to go. A discussion on what to do with them follows, and while most of the party disagrees, they default to Senu's choice of killing the boggards. They know far too much about us to be allowed to live, Senu reasons. The party then rests and prepares for the final stage of the Keeper's trial. Early in the morning the next day, Senu sends them once again into Aemon's soul, where Aemon is forced to relive the events that led to him slaughtering all who were aboard the Midnight Dove, after which the party faces down and ultimately defeats what they refer to as Evil Aemon before waking up in Bahrain. Senu explains that before undergoing the trial, Aemon was a fractured vessel for his magic. Now, that vessel has been made whole again. Aemon then makes his new staff, choosing to embed Naren's tear into it and having Renister infuse some of his essence into it as well. The party winds into another chunk of downtime, with Aemon and Renister joining Senu to create Aemon's new staff, Phosphorus gathering and creating as many spare snare parts as he can, and Raiji being taken to Dilo, a forest dragon deep within the jungle, where he trains, with no rest or sleep, for the entire downtime. Act 4. A Train to Catch. After 3 days, Aemon's staff is completed, and the party reunites as the elves throw a feast and celebration. They eat the ancestor fruit that grows on Emelche, which contains the emotions of all the past Jaedun elves. Once the festivities have died down, Aemon goes to speak with Emelche, while the others prepare to leave with Sunny. He sits within her trunk as she shows him a vision of a blue-winged butterfly, quickly growing into a towering blue-scaled dragon, though he gets a little more from her. After a night's rest, the party bids the Jaedun elves, Emelche, Fleta, and Bahrain goodbye, as Senu teleports them close to Koi. They've been gone for a month, and much has changed. The woodsmen are all but eliminated, thanks to a compass made by Yinhi, Tajima, and Prykus. It points to the nearest woodsman sentinel, what the guards have taken to calling the bigger wooden humanoids with cocoons on their back, within 100 miles. Tajima and the scouts have been busy taking them out. After getting their payment from Sunny, the party goes to speak with Ikon. He tells them Shinta, the girl they saved from the panther, has gone to Wakuzana to live with her aunt who teaches at the college there, and that her father Nakanishi has been sent to prison there. And unfortunately, there's been no sign of Kubo, though he does offer the group a job. An old friend of his named Bondo, an ex-member of the guard turned were-crocodile, lives secluded deep within the basin, a long stretch of jungle close to the Wakata River. He wants the party to go and ask him and his crocs for assistance in defending the locomote headed towards Koi. While they were gone, the bandits hit another locomote and got away with some sky shard, a highly volatile material that gives off concussive force when struck. Okano and 20 other guards are on the locomote already, but Ikon knows that might not be enough to stop the bandits this time. If they left at once, they'd just be able to make it to Bondo's and then hitch a ride on the locomote before it enters the red zone, the stretch of river where the bandits have attacked the locomotes before. They accept, with Aemon going off to catch up with Yinhi while the others rent striders, the horse-sized lizards often used as mounts for the journey. Thus, the party of 4 becomes a party of 7, as the striders Basil, Zumo, and Oz carry them east towards Bondo. After 7 days' travel, they are ambushed in the middle of the night by a couple woodsmen and a tree sentinel, this time with no cocoon on its back. Just when they have things under control, the hooded man appears out of invisibility to join the fray. In the fighting, a part of his face is broken off, revealing metal plating, wires, and circuitry underneath. He almost kills them all, but teleports away before finishing them off with a bit of Eamon's blood. Phosphorus identifies him as an android, long-forgotten humanoid constructs, but the party knows little more than that. They decide to send Oz back with a message to Ikon and Tajima, warning them of the hooded man, before continuing forward shaken from the experience. After more days spent trudging through the basin, they are met by Bondo in a rowboat and his platoon of river crocodiles. They explain why they're there, giving Bondo a letter written by Ikon. He invites them back to his shack, where he explains that something's been hunting down his crocs, and nobody's going anywhere until they figure out what's going on. Though thanks to renting the Striders, the party has time to spare, so they get to work. Raiji, of all people, identifies the culprit as a Kruth, vicious apex predators that feast on crocodiles, alligators, and lizard folk. They set out to slay the beast, but not before Phosphorus whips up an elixir to help Bondo resist transforming into his were-crocodile form. 2 fights in the basin ensue, one with a fully grown Kruth and a hatchling, and then with the remaining hatchlings at the Kruth's den. With everything taken care of now, Bondo offers himself and his 11 remaining crocs to help with the locomote defense. Though the party ultimately decides not to bring Bondo along, fearing he might turn and attack them, the guards, or even worse, a passenger. Bondo respects their decision and sends the crocodiles off with the party under the orders to listen to Renistir. After a few more days' travel in the basin, on a rowboat gifted to them by Bondo, the party rendezvous with Okano on the locomote well before it enters the red zone. Vip is also on board, with a handful of assembly folks working to fortify the boat against attack. Phosphorus and Raiju quickly join them in this endeavor, while Renistir and Eamon look into something for Okano. One of the locomote barges holds some passengers, which are locked inside at all times for their own safety. During his nightly rounds, Okano noticed one of the locks has been tampered with. Admitting it might just be his own paranoia, he still asked the two to look into things. They soon discover the culprit to be Lily, a starry-eyed young woman with a pet owl. She is quickly subdued and her owl killed before it can escape. Okano and the party tie her up and interrogate her in one of the locomote barges. Everyone plays a hand in gaining information, but all in all they learn the following. Lily, real name Alice, is an undercover bandit. She'd been sending letters with information on the locomote's defenses to her people. Junkok, now the sole leader of the bandits, will be attacking the front engine, which Okano has tasked the party with defending. But most troubling of all is that the hooded man has been in and out of the bandit camp, having dealings of some sort with Junkok, though she knows little else. The party sets to prepare for the coming battle, warning the guards of the hooded man's capabilities and meeting Kix, the loudmouth goblin in charge of the front engine. After a few days spent tinkering, watching, and bolstering morale, the bandits finally launch their attack in the dead of night. As a rainstorm swirls around them, the bandits fly in on paragliders, with Junkok having some sort of sky shard device in his backpack. The party just barely defeats the bandits, but not before Raiji comes within an inch of death, and Junkok manages to destroy the bolt connecting the engine to the rest of the locomote. Kix rushes to the rescue, having whipped up a harpoon gun that reels the engine back into place before things can drift too far apart. As the fighting dies down, the bandits have been repelled, and with minimal casualties to boot. Okano was critically wounded in the fighting, but thanks to Eamon and Renistir's magical healing, he pulls through. The party settles in as they ride out the remainder of the journey back to Koi. Renistir thanks the Crocs for their help and sends them off back to Bondo, with everyone remaining on guard and edge after the hooded man failed to make another appearance. As they get close to Koi, they pick up on a bit of excitement from the guards as they learn they'll be arriving the night before Jiyu Noko, a traditional festival of games, food, and contests during the day, and a somber celebration of the deceased once the sun has set. Act 5. Celebration and Sorrow. The locomote pulls into the Koi docks after several days of travel. Ikon is there to greet and thank the party as he takes Lily/Alice into custody. He got their letter, and the guards and scouts have been notified about the hooded man, but they've seen no sign of him. He pays them for their work and tells them to enjoy themselves during Jiyu Noko. They've earned it. So the party heads back to their old stomping ground, the Emperor's Inn and Pub, and has a night of arm wrestling, drinks, and laughs. Eamon makes sure to stop by the assembly hall and invite Yinhee out to join the group as they enjoy the festival tomorrow, which she gladly accepts. After a morning spent sleeping off hangovers, Raiji signs up for every athletic-based festival event he can, followed in suit by Renistir. Eamon and Phosphorus choose to partake more sparingly, but no matter what the event, a member of the party ends up winning every heat they enter. During their travel through Koi, the party runs into Naito Tao, a noble from Wakuzana who has come to speak during the nightly festivities. He introduces himself, telling him that Ikon spoke very highly of the party, though his eyes oddly linger on Renistir before he bids them farewell. As the day's events wind down, most of the city, party included, make their way to the graveyards. Here, Kuhara and the other priests and priestesses are helping folks pay respects to their ancestors by writing them letters on slips of parchment and burning them in a large bonfire. It's here Raiji spots something strange off in the jungle. A woodsman that speaks, referring to Eamon's staff as its mother. The party quickly gathers, as the woodsman says it can take them to where it was born. From the sounds of it, close to 7 days' travel away. Eamon recruits Tajima, Miki, and Miyaki to come with, and the 8 of them set off. After a few days, the compass used to find woodsman sentinels that Tajima carries suddenly locks onto something and points directly back towards Koi. Not wanting to return to a destroyed city, but fearing that the timing is a little too perfect, Tajima and the scouts head back to Koi while the party continues to follow the woodsman further into the jungle. Eventually, they find a strange stone gazebo with arcane teleportation sigils written on its base, hidden with illusion magic that uses slips of paper that are reminiscent of the blood tags used by the boggarts. Eamon activates the teleporter, as the party and the woodsman are whisked away into some sort of underground facility. There is a single hallway that leads to 4 cell-like rooms, the first of which contains a growing area for the bulbous plant creatures that the party has faced before. The second is a twisted surgical lab with a ghoul, intelligent undead that feast on humanoid flesh trapped within it. The third contains a strange, malformed creature that shares a passing resemblance to the mites the party scared off while looking into the missing rice. The fourth contains a wooden puppet, resembling a young boy. He sits in his cell, covering canvases in blood, painting horrific scenes of violence. Phosphorus identifies the creature as a soul puppet, constructs formed from a humanoid soul, normally retaining some sort of the previous soul's personality, but in a usually twisted way. Then it clicks. Kubo loved to paint, more than anything in the world. And after all this time, they finally found him. Eamon loses it, attacking everything within sight as the party puts down Kubo for good, knowing that there's nothing more they can do for him. As Eamon flees the room, a 5th, much larger chamber at the end of the hall has appeared, which he hurries into, shortly followed by the rest of the party. The wall slams shut behind them, locking them in. Inside is a vat filled with green goop, reminiscent of the cocoons the woodsman sentinels carried. 3 metal cylinders labeled PHO-1, REN-1, and AIM-1, and a floating sphere filled with a strangely luminescent blue liquid. The sphere is spinning out of control, and Phosphorus quickly identifies that, if it isn't stopped, it will explode, taking everything in this complex with it. The party fights android versions of Phosphorus and Renistir, as well as a handful of woodsmen. After the fighting breaks open the vat of green goop, Eamon finds the stone that the hooded man took after killing Naren's sister within it. With all the enemies slain, Phosphorus picks up a strange stone tablet that android Phosphorus was using to control the room, and begins working at finding a way to stop the sphere with it. Meanwhile, Renistir begins breaking down the wall so that they can make an escape if need be. Phosphorus puts in a sequence he thinks will stop the sphere, but instead it reveals a secret chamber in the room, one with a pair of smooth black crystals. Raiji, now carrying Phosphorus on his back, runs over to the crystals, with one of them acting as a keyboard covered in the common alphabet. He messages back and forth with some sort of entity, pleading with it to stop the sphere, but to no avail. When with their time running out, the party decides to cut their losses and run to the teleporter. All 4 of them and the woodsman make it just in the nick of time, teleporting to the stone gazebo as the area below them erupts into a colossal explosion. It sends everyone flying, and by the time the dust has settled, the woodsman is no more than a pile of splinters. Seinu appears, having been drawn by a massive disturbance in the forest, and agrees to teleport the party back to Koi after a night's rest. That night, the 4 discuss many things: Eamon's magic, the hooded man's intentions, Kubo's fate, the purpose of the underground complex, and where Eamon's android version might be. After bidding Seinu farewell and teleporting back to Koi, the party approaches town to see Kuhara tending to the graveyard. When she notices them, it looks like she's seen a ghost as she drops a bombshell. The town was attacked by a small force of woodsmen, but they were easily taken care of. The scouts arrive shortly after, and then Eamon, or at least something that looks, sounds, and acts like him, returns shortly after the scouts. He said the party was attacked by the hooded man and killed, and that fake versions of the whole party were headed towards Koi, though Kuhara knew something was off after she asked him about her mentor's ring that she gifted Renistir, and Eamon had no clue what she was talking about. She agrees to go with them to the Bumble Brigade hideout while they figure out what to do, but after walking for about 15 minutes, Renister notices that the ever-so-slight limp Kuhara has is gone. He calls her out. Her demeanor shifts, and a fight breaks out, with her wielding identical magic to the hooded man. The party knocks her unconscious, or so they think, as her tied-up body disappears. Raiji finds tracks leading from the fight back towards Koi, and the party follows them, once again running into Kuhara, but this time with Android Eamon as backup. They are defeated, with Kuhara plunging her hand in her chest and detonating in an explosion reminiscent of when the complex self-destructed. The party are left wondering whether Kuhara was evil all along, or if that was the hooded man in disguise, or if she was under control. After Phosphorus sneaks into Koi and explains the situation to Dill, and then to Econ, the party and Econ head to the chapel to look into Kuhara. In her room, they find a much smaller set of black crystals, similar to the ones found in the underground complex, but little more. They talk with the other priests and priestesses of the chapel, learning that Kuhara had been head priestess for close to 2 decades and been a priestess at the chapel for 2 more, again leaving the party confused as to what's truly going on. After Dill takes a look at the black crystal, he figures he can try to reverse engineer where it's connected to, but even with the help of Phosphorus and Eamon, they fail. As the crystals clatter to the floor, words come across the screen again, and the party has a conversation with the same entity Raiji spoke to, back in the underground complex. Phosphorus tells it his name, and it issues a challenge. Come and find me within the walls of Wakuzana. Raiji and Phosphorus head back to the Emperor's Inn pub to prepare to head out, while Renister and Eamon go and tell Teruya, Kubo's mother, that they have confirmed her son's death, though they ultimately decide to leave out him being turned into a soul puppet. Eamon stops by the assembly to talk with Yinhi one last time, inviting her to join him in Wakuzana. She declines, as Tajima has offered her a position amongst the guard as their resident primal magic expert, which she has taken. They bid each other farewell, with the promise to write to one another. Renister stops by the chapel to pay for a headstone for Kubo before the party meets back up one last time at the Emperor's Inn pub. They decide to split up once they reach Wakuzana, to cover more ground, as it's such a massive city. And so Season 1 ends with more questions than answers, as Raiji, Phosphorus, Renister, and Eamon head to Wakuzana in search of whoever or whatever was on the other side of that black crystal.